Hi, welcome to CLiKD Creative Interviews. Hi guys, welcome to the latest CLiKD Creative Interview, and today I am happy to be joined by the House of Q.
Hello.
Hi.
Hello.
So guys, if you want to maybe introduce yourselves one by one and then just start by telling us a bit about what House of Q is.
Amazing. Well, I am Alexander Lutley. I play two characters in the House of Q, Pie the Mime and Mercury Presents.
I'm Felicity Furore, and I'm the burlesque dancer and general female.
And I'm Neil Kelso. I am a magician and other things.
Amazing.
Mostly magician.
Sweet.
And the House of Q, we worked together a few years ago on a musical called These Trees Are Made of Blood.
Mm-hmm.
And we got on so well and thought that our styles and our visions for what we wanted to create matched, and then
Sweet.
we joined forces.
The ultimate trio.
The ultimate trio.
I mean, you guys have just so much to you in terms of your abilities, be it dance or obviously burlesque or acting, mime, magic, fortune telling. How did you guys find such a nice way to link them all together for the House of Q?
Well, Cabaret in its essence is a variety art form, and so I think it allowed us to coexist and all do our own individual skills, one after the other, either telling the same story or in a variety show kind of manner,
Right.
telling lots of different things.
Yeah, it's really interesting because it's very inspiring to work with people from very different art forms to explore similar ideas, because you look at things from a very different perspective,
Yeah,
you
of
learn
course.
from each other, and yeah, it's very inspiring.
Yeah, we were all individual cabaret artists before
Sure.
we joined forces. I personally love how it's a conversation with the audience. There's no fourth wall, meaning every single show is completely different because the way that they react to you will obviously shape your
Of course, right, yeah.
performance.
It's also really exciting, I find, because you're always reacting to the audiences. It's always, you never know what's going to happen a lot of the time in live performance.
Right,
so
right, yeah.
sometimes, your music will stop and you have to react to that, and I find that really exciting.
Yeah, it makes it really live because the audience play an equal role
Sure.
in what you create. So it's conversation and it happens in that moment and it will never be the same again.
Yeah, absolutely.
So it's a really incredible live, immersive experience.
Actually, just going with you, Neil, if you can just ask more kind of individual questions. Just with your show coming up, I Draw Clouds, actually in the Nursery Theatre where we are currently.
Oh. You mean this show? Yes, let me tell you about it. It's a solo show. It's a few years since I've done a solo show, so it's an hour-long show which explores all of the different things that I do. So I am a magician, but I also write for some people, and music's always involved in what I do. So it's a way for me to explore a slightly longer form of storytelling than individual cabaret acts would be able to do.
So when you kind of started with magic, was there anybody in particular that inspired you?
I started out actually in the circus. So I went to circus school when I was very small in Belgium and started as a juggler, and met magicians and ventriloquists and dabbled a little and was learning piano at the same time, and just it never kind of went away, and I kept finding opportunities to work in it, and it gradually took over my life.
That's amazing. So now just on to you, Felicity, if you don't mind. How do you find that recognising the history of burlesque and bringing that into your show in terms of your performance and bringing that into it?
Yeah, I mean, it's always good to kind of know where everything started. So I definitely reference the olden days of burlesque when it all started out.
Sure.
I'm very much into the vintage thing anyway. I just love the glamour and the whole kind of vibe of that. Whereas I think from a performance perspective, it's a much more modern thing, and I think with performance, it's good to have influences from different angles and also like everything. For my performances, I draw from the modern and the cultural things that are happening at the moment, just to kind of create my own character and things like that. So just.
In terms of music's role in it, obviously choice must be massive, but do you have any kind of particular favourites that you go to a lot, or?
Not really. Anything with a good beat. I'm not a trained dancer, so
Sure.
I like music that kind of tells me what to do. But no, anything. I tend to start with a character and then work from that. So sometimes, say, I'll be like a vintage showgirl, in which case I'll do the classic burlesque vibes, jazz and swing and things like that. And other times it will be kind of 60s, like bossa nova, like Austin Powers theme tune or hip hop or whatever I fancy that day. Like
or Ghostbusters.
I have Ghostbusters as well.
So Alexander, with Pie the Mime, he's known as gender bending, and on top of other acts that you've done recently, Princess Charming and the show that you've got coming up, Queer Story the Musical, it's obviously very much queer culture related, and I'm just curious in terms of with everything that's been in the news recently, with a lot of celebrities kind of being called out for say misuse of the culture or misunderstanding or appropriation in that sense, how important do you think it is for queer artists to tell queer stories and for it to be done obviously by queer performers?
First and foremost, it's important for queer stories to be told. Obviously it would be wonderful if it was told by queer artists, but I think it, as long as there is a queer person involved in some way in telling the story, whether it's influencing how it's written or directing, so that it's actually coming from a genuine experience. I think it's really important. For example, the Danish girl is Eddie Redmayne, who is not trans, and it is a shame that there isn't a trans actor that could have played that role. However, are we at a stage where there is a trans actor that would have had the same reach as Eddie Redmayne? Maybe not. So as long as there are trans people involved in creating that story, I think it's more important for those queer stories to be heard.
Yeah, absolutely.
And it's wonderful that all sorts of people want to tell them. I think the aim obviously would be that there are queer artists that are celebrated and recognised and followed enough that eventually we can tell our own stories.
Yeah, exactly.
But if other people want to help us until then great.
Of course. So how do you find the difference between playing Mercury and Pie the Mime?
Well, Pie can't talk. That's the main difference.
There we go.
They both started from me very much, and then have kind of evolved off into their own character. So I've kind of seen how they've developed as time goes on. Mercury is much more of a relaxed performer than Pie. There is a tension in Pie the Mime trying to tell stories, an urgency almost.
In terms of kind of going back to kind of speaking about queer culture and stuff like that, we've had this rise over the past few years of stuff like RuPaul's Drag Race, and I was wondering if you guys thought that stuff like RuPaul's Drag Race had possibly opened the door even more for people to be more accepting and more have a greater understanding of what you get up to and increase, say, viewership of your show.
I think it's done a good thing because it's got it into conversations. So people are more aware generally of diversity, and it's entered into daily conversations, and people have references now that they can communicate about it with. It's quite a narrow field of reference.
Yeah, of course.
Because it's a very specific view of an area. But for me, I find that I always try to come into a show thinking about what the audience know, so that I can communicate with them using language and references they know. So arriving into the room and knowing that that's part of their dialogue already just widens the goalpost of what I feel like creatively I can offer.
Oh, amazing.
So I find it does kind of open things up a little bit.
I mean, I find things like RuPaul's Drag Race often can be quite, as Neil was saying, quite narrow. So obviously that gives us one view of queer culture, and that's kind of a very well-known view now. So for me and I think us as a trio, it's quite important in our performances to build on that a little bit. Like, I think anything bigger than that is still yet to be explored a bit more in TV and popular culture, and I think that's what we try and do a little bit and touch on in our shows, because there are a lot of other
facets
queer people around.
As the group House of Q, what would you guys consider your greatest success?
Collectively, I mean, I'm incredibly proud, as I think we all are, of all of the shows that we've done. We've had the pleasure of touring internationally.
Amazing.
We've done shows at the beautiful Crazy Cops at Brasserie d'Adèle in Piccadilly Circus. We do a show every month at Delhi, which is a wonderful place, and we want everyone to come down. me personally, I'm incredibly proud this year of Princess Charming, which is the cabaret for families, talking about queer culture for all ages.
Yeah, I think I always go back to the fact that when we first kind of came together as a trio back in 2015, we'd just come out of doing something incredibly political, incredibly moving, humanitarian stories, and we wanted to continue creating exciting work. And we sat together and wrote down some, like, what would be our wish list dreams for the first year of things to accomplish. And when it came to a year later, we'd done them all in the first few months of that year, and like accomplished so much more and travelled all over Europe at that stage.
I think for me, on a personal kind of note, doing silhouettes was strange for me because I'm not coming from a theatre background or a performing background. It really pushed me out of my comfort zone to kind of do something slightly more theatrical, and not just showgirling. So that was a real achievement, kind of bringing everything together and doing something that had a proper kind of storyline to it and something just so different.
So can you guys give us an insight into your future plans, or is it all under wraps?
It's all top secret.
Oh no.
No, so Silhouettes, which is the film noir immersive cabaret experience, we are definitely looking to bring back. And I know Felicity's been working on some acts, and obviously we've been working on some shows as well. And possibly continuing to create our body of work and make bigger and better and more flamboyant and glittery shows.
I mean, I'm personally looking forward to it.
Wonderful.
Awesome. I mean, speaking of the shows, could you recommend any that you've seen over this year, or stuff that's coming up from, say, I don't know, friends of yours, or any that you particularly want to push?
Going to see anything is probably better than not seeing anything.
Yeah. Sure.
No matter how rough and ready it is, if there's something, even if it's something really local on a small scale, going and engaging with that helps make the world a better place. There's also some really special cabarets out there, if you're looking at cabaret specifically, that champion all kinds of exciting causes. And there's loads. In London there's an amazing one called Lads, there's an amazing Cocoa Butter Club, there's lots of excellent cabarets happening around that are not just providing entertainment, they do provide the best entertainment, but also it feels like you're bringing people together and doing good things.
Yeah, and see, Briefs is a good one. That's here at Christmas. In Leicester Square. That's a really fun show.
Awesome.
And I'm also going to unashamedly say, come to our show.
I mean, but of course.
Please do. Yes. Yeah, we do a show every month here at Theatre Delhi.
Sweet.
And it's free entry.
I mean, I was there, was it 2 weeks ago or so, for the Halloween special? Oh, it was on Halloween, wasn't it?
Yeah.
That was really funny.
You were a ghost.
Fun. Couldn't see a thing, underneath the sheet, was wielding a knife, it was all very exciting.
Yeah, no two shows are the same ever, but we do make our monthly shows very diverse and exciting, and as you saw, we really involve people.
Yeah, I was going to say, it's awesome also when the crowd properly get into it. Like, there were a lot of people there, or at least maybe 20% of the crowd, which is more than I was expecting, in costume, or just really kind of getting in amongst it.
Yeah, it's lovely. That's going back to the earlier questions. That is the conversation that we love.
I think we aim to make it engaging for everyone. So if you are an extrovert that loves getting involved in things, there's room for you. If you're an introvert that just wants to come along and watch and not take part, that's perfectly fine with us as well. We just try and make it a really diverse, interesting space.
Awesome, it's been lovely speaking to you guys, and thank you so much for just all the insight into kind of all your shows and everything that's going on in the future, and just really great.
Thank you so much for having us.
Thanks.
Thanks a lot, guys, and see you next time.
Bye.